The combined bands of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards lead on to parade the Royal Guard for the visit of the Colonel-in-Chief, Her Majesty the Queen. It was 10 years ago, when they were stationed in Catterick, that Her Majesty last visited the regiment. Since then, the regiment has spent most of its time fulfilling its NATO role in West Germany with the British Army on the Rhine. It has also seen service in Canada and in 1980 a tour of Northern Ireland. For the last 18 months, the regiment has been back in England, with 3 squadrons living in Tidworth and the 4th, D Squadron, in Warminster, working for the School of Infantry. The Guard is made up by members of A and B Squadron and is commanded by B Squadron leader, Major Michael Tippett. He is now forming them up in preparation for the arrival of Her Majesty, the Queen. The Regimental Sergeant Major, WO1 Mr. Cullen, moves forward to check their dressing. He was appointed RSM in 1986, prior to the move to Tidworth from Senelager. The standard was presented by Her Majesty in 1971 at the Amalgamation Parade at Holyrood Palace in Scotland, and bears 50 of the 88 battle honours won through 3 centuries. Wars in Western Europe, Spain, Portugal, and the famous charge of the Union Brigade at Waterloo, when Sergeant Ewart captured the standard of the 45th Imperial Regiment of Foot, which now forms part of the badge of today's regiment. The Lord Lieutenant, Colonel Sir Hugh Brassey, is not only an ex-serving officer, but also a past colonel of the regiment, talks with Lieutenant General Sir Norman Arthur, the present colonel of the regiment. Ramillies, the regimental drum horse, is escorted by 2 of the regiment's greys. These grey horses have been a significant part of the regiment and their identity through the centuries, giving rise to the grey berry that is worn today. The horses of the Scots Greys have always been grey, except during the First World War, when they were stained chestnut for camouflage. The 5 stars signify the arrival of Field Marshal Sir John Stanier, who transferred from the Queen's Own Hussars to the Royal Scots Greys to command in 1966 until 1968. His last job in the army was Chief of the General Staff, when he also held the appointment of Colonel of the Regiment, handing over to Lieutenant General Sir Norman Arthur in 1985. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Melville Jameson, greets the Field Marshal and Lady Stanier and introduces them to Brigadier David Thompson, the garrison commander. Her Majesty arrives with a mounted escort. Her Majesty is accompanied by her lady-in-waiting, Lady Susan Hussey. Colonel Sir Hugh Brassey greets the Colonel-in-Chief and introduces her to the Colonel of the Regiment. She's introduced to the commanding officer, the Field Marshal, and also the garrison commander. Her Majesty is welcomed by a royal salute. Major Tippett reports the Royal Guard of Honour ready for her inspection. Her Majesty moves forward, escorted by Major Tippett and accompanied by the commanding officer, the Colonel of the Regiment, and her Crown Equerry, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Wilson. Queen inspects the parade, accompanied by the combined bands, playing that famous tune, Amazing Grace. It has become traditional since the amalgamation that when the Queen inspects the regiment, Amazing Grace is played. Her escorts pay their compliments to the standard. This tune was first played for Her Majesty at the Amalgamation Parade in 1971. Subsequently, it was released as a single, reaching #1 in the British charts, a position that it held for a number of weeks. Since then, it has sold nearly 19 million copies throughout the world and has been part of the recent identity of the regiment. The inspection now complete, the Guard Commander asks Her Majesty for permission to carry on. Following the inspection, the combined bands prepare to move forward of the Guard for their display to the tune of the 79th Farewell to Gibraltar. The first part of the display involves the pipes and drums, led by Drum Major Gil Finnan, who has been with the band since 1974, when he transferred from the Argyll and Southern Highlanders. He became Drum Major in 1983, and like every other member of the Pipes and Drums, is a fully trained tank crewman. All the pipers are seen on parade carrying pipe banners of past and present officers. The pipe major Pipe Major Bruce, today has the honour of carrying the personal pipe banner of Her Majesty. The pipes and drums are one of two military bands of Grade 1 standard, the other being the 2nd Battalion, the Scots Guards. During the last 18 months, besides going on tour with the Regimental Band, they have competed in numerous competitions in Scotland, where they have delighted their home crowds and gaining 10th place in the World Championships. Both bands performed throughout the country on official and charity engagements last year, but found time to tour Australia in the spring and the United States of America in the autumn, where they played for the President in front of the White House. The Regimental Band marches on, led by the bandmaster, WO1 Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson joined the Army in May of 1968 as a bandsman. In 1972, he attended the bandsman's course at Kneller Hall, the Army School of Music. He returned to Kneller Hall in 1979 on the bandmaster's course, and during this visit, he had the honour of being one of the trumpeters at the wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. He was appointed bandmaster to the Regimental Band in 1982, and last year he took them back to Kneller Hall, where they were graded outstanding in the 5-yearly inspection by the Royal School of Music. They are the second band in the Army to achieve this accolade since 1984. The Queen departs from the parade for a briefing on the regiment by the commanding officer. The Guard commander orders a royal salute. Ramillies was given to the regiment by Her Majesty last year at the Royal Windsor Horse Show. He was bred at her own stud on the Sandringham estate and stands nearly 18 hands high. He is the second largest horse that Her Majesty has bred and one of the largest drum horses. The Queen is introduced to the bandmaster, W01 Thompson. She is introduced to W02 Band Sergeant Major Raleigh. He joined the regiment in 1966 and was appointed Band Sergeant Major in January of 1987. Pipe Major Bruce originally joined the Royal Marines before he transferred to the regiment. He will be the senior Pipe Major at this year's Edinburgh Military Tattoo. And now you can see Her Majesty's Pipe Banner. And Drum Major Gilfinnan. The Queen moves forward to see Ramillies, ridden today by Staff Sergeant Hogarth on one of his last parades before he leaves the army. The white bearskin was introduced in 1887, now unique in the British Army, and was out of use until the Queen's father's coronation in 1937. Her Majesty is wearing the regimental brooch that she was presented with at the Amalgamation Parade, the Eagle of the Greys surmounted on the cross carbines of the Carbineers. Lance Corporal McQueen explains to Her Majesty the types of ammunition that are available to the Recce Troop with their Scorpions. The troop is currently serving in Belize. Her Majesty is being escorted by Captain Kushner, the regimental signals officer. Mr. McGregor from 3rd Troop C Squadron introduces her to his chieftain crew. As Her Majesty walks through the equipment display, she passes soldiers dressed in full MBC kit, performing a chemical recce under Lance Corporal Kelly. Throughout the display, Her Majesty will see some of the equipment available to the regiment while they are in England. Corporal Faulkner explains the different types of vehicles and the main engine packlift, which is currently taking place in the background. At the chef's tent, she meets Corporal McLaughlin, and Private Tilly, where she tries some of the cake that they have just baked. Trooper Mackintosh from the Stables Troop, dressed here as a W01 trooper with one of the grey horses that the Scots Greys had. One of the regiment's 57 Chieftain main battle tanks is loaded onto a Commander tank transporter from the local RCT transporter squadron. Lance Corporal Camp from the regiment's Light Aid Detachment explains to Her Majesty the Spartan being recovered by a Samson. Two members from the Armoured Trials and Development Unit at Bovington explain some of the equipment that may come into service. The Queen, escorted by the Colonel of the regiment, leaves the display to go to the warrant officers and sergeant's mess for drinks and a photograph. Then she will go on to the officers' mess at Tedworth House for their photograph prior to lunch.
Perfect, thank you. Ready? We're having hats on. Hats on.
Wives, children and families are gathered for the garden party in the tented village on the Tidworth sports pitches after lunch. There is a tented area for each squadron, and members of the association were invited to join their old squadrons. Her Majesty is introduced to the members of A Squadron by their squadron leader, Major Donathorne Tate. Her Majesty is introduced to the members of B Squadron by their squadron leader, Major Tippett. He was also the guard commander on the parade this morning. Her Majesty is introduced to the members of D Squadron by their squadron leader, Major Allen. Her Majesty is introduced to Frau Felicitas Dahmer. She lives near Osnabrück in West Germany, and she's been responsible for a number of the grey horses that the regiment owns today. And on the left, we can see Sergeant Danny Radcliffe, who's been such a strong supporter of all these regimental activities. And the regimental kindergarten, which is run so well by many of the wives of the regiment. Number of the wives there. Mrs. Alice Ingram, Mrs. Joan Taylor, and finally the Regimental Sergeant Major calls out the prizes for the Moncrief Shield, won by A Squadron. Sergeant Major Jimmy Evans comes forward to collect this prize from Her Majesty. Sergeant Major Evans explains to Her Majesty what the actual competition involves. Mr. Walker from 4th Troop A Squadron comes forward to collect the cup for the best troop at this year's gunnery camp at Castle Martin. And finally the cup for the best crew at Castle Martin, which is collected by Trooper Mackenzie of C Squadron. The crowd of some 3,000 guests stand for the arrival of His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, while in the background the 21-gun salute given by a recce troop draws to a close. His Royal Highness is met by the Colonel of the Regiment, Lieutenant General Sir Norman Arthur, and shown up to the Royal Dais. His Royal Highness meets the Colonel of the Regiment's wife, Lady Arthur. King Constantine and Queen Anne-Marie of the Hellenes are here today as their son, Prince Pavlos, is on parade.
And there was a mounting in hot haste. The steed and mustering squadron and the clattering car went pouring forward with impetuous speed and swiftly forming in the ranks of war. And the deep thunder peal on peal afar, and near the beat of the alarming drum roused up the soldier ere the morning star. While from the citizens with terror dumb, or whispering with white lips, the foe, they come, they come.
Amongst the gunfire and explosions, the regiment will advance in 3 waves.
I would ask you to wonder what words Lord Byron would have chosen to conjure the picture of modern massed armour with its diverse weaponry. The 57 tanks of the regiment, each weighing 60 tons, capable of firing super-velocity ammunition at twice the speed of a rifle bullet, are an impressive military tool. Add to this the strength of the all-arms group with infantry, artillery, and the added dimension of air power, the combination defies description. Today by pilots of 20 Tactical Fighter Wing, United States Air Force, from RAF Upper Haven. They were built in 1968, but remain one of the most technologically advanced aircraft in the world. With their terrain-following radar, the F-111 is capable of carrying over 10 tons of...
The regiment on parade, seen from left to right in order of seniority. D Squadron, A Squadron, B and then C Squadron, with their REMI support vehicles in the form of 432s and Centurion recovery vehicles.
A proportion of the regiment's strength. The regiment is 310 years old this year and has been in its amalgamated and present form for the last 17 years. It will interest you to know that on parade today, there are 30 sons of either past or serving members of the
And on the
regiment.
right, the echelon of HQ squadron, consisting of the quartermaster's departments, the motor transport department, and the chefs.
The affiliated cadet force that you will see during the march past. These facts are important.
The regimental band and pipes and drums march on parade, led by Drum Major Gilfinnan. The regiment is the only cavalry regiment allowed to wear a black bearskin, and the bandsmen are identified with their splendid red plumes across the crest of their bearskins. The commanding officer's trumpeter, Lance Corporal Baranowski. The commanding officer orders a regimental salute as the regimental standard, bearing the battle honours of the regiment, is marched onto parade. Following the regimental salute, he orders a royal salute for His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Melville Jameson, comes forward, salutes His Royal Highness, and invites him to inspect the regiment. The Royal Land Rover has been lent by the Royal Mews, came down from Scotland at the beginning of the week for this parade, and at the beginning of next week will go back up to Balmoral. His Royal Highness joined the Royal Scots Greys in 1955, 4 years after the colonel of the regiment. He was adjutant in 1964 to 1965, and his last tour of duty was commanding Sea Squadron in 1969 up until the Amalgamation Parade in 1971. He finally left the regiment in 1975. His Royal Highness, with the commanding officer and colonel of the regiment, moves over towards the regimental band and pipes and drums. He meets Pipe Major Bruce. The bands have got a busy summer ahead of them, with a Cape tour in Scotland in late July, early August, followed by participating in the Edinburgh Military Tattoo. Then in September, they're off to Denmark, followed by a tour of the United States of America in October. And towards the end of November, they'll move across to Fallingbostel with the rest of the regiment. The Royal Party moves past the regimental standard, WO2 RQMS McCroskey. Lieutenant Colonel John Walton, chairman of the association, salutes His Royal Highness and introduces him to the members of the association. Most of their faces will be very familiar, considering they either served with him or under him during his time in the Scots Greys.
And of course, the current regiment. Some of their number have fought with great bravery in the hills and jungles of Burma, while others have endured the sand and heat of the Western Desert and North Africa. The fierce fight through Italy and the slog from Normandy to the Baltic. Each battle has added honor and distinction to the regiment of today, and while perhaps lacking the obvious glamour of the 19th century horsemen, they uphold the attitude of cavalry that perhaps runs deeper than mere stable yard and tank park. Also on parade with the old comrades today, the regiment is particularly pleased to welcome representatives of those service organisations with which we have special affiliations. The Royal Navy and HMS Glasgow and HMS Resolution, the Territorial Army with the Ayrshire Yeomanry, overseas regiments, some of whose numbers have travelled a great distance to be here this weekend, the Windsor Regiment, the Royal Canadian Armoured Corps, the 12th 16th Hunter River Lancers, the Royal Australian Armoured Corps, and the New Zealand Scottish from the Royal
His
New
Royal
Zealand
Highness now meets
Armoured
those
Corps.
from the affiliated regiments.
And later,
And they have come
we'll see
from
during the drive
places
past
like
the
Australia,
Royal Scots Dragoon
New
Guards
Zealand,
cadets.
and from the Royal Navy, HMS Glasgow and Resolution. His Royal Highness, escorted by the Colonel of the regiment, returns to the Royal Dais. The commanding officer orders a royal salute prior to asking permission to drive the regiment past.
Your Royal Highness, may I have your leave to march the regiment and the old comrades off parade, so please.
Commanding officer moves off in his Ferret, which is a 4-ton wheeled reconnaissance vehicle. A crew of 2 at a top speed of 58 miles per hour. Followed by the regimental standard. Escorted by 2 staff sergeants, Staff Sergeant Aitchison and Staff Sergeant Williscroft. And the Regimental Association move off for their march past to the tune the 79th Farewell to Gibraltar.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we wait for the regimental drive past, it is perhaps useful to explain our peacetime role. Whilst in England, the regiment has provided tanks, expertise and manpower for a host of trials and exercises, completing over 15,000 track miles during 1987 and even more this year. In September this year, we returned to Germany and Fallingbostel for a 9 or 10-year tour. While serving with the British Army of the Rhine, the regiment formed a vital part of Britain's contribution to NATO and an important ingredient in the deterrent strategy. Deterrence is designed to dissuade a potential enemy from aggressive action by inferring that any such move is likely to be costly, with costs that outweigh the gains. In order to deter effectively, one's forces must be good and seem to be good. Therefore, the 4 Sabre Squadrons, Recce Troop, Regimental Headquarters and the support of the Headquarters Squadron continue to strive for excellence.
It's the Regimental Association that leads the march past. The Sherman tank, lent to us today by the Tank Museum at Bovington, commanded by Brigadier Sloan of the 3rd Carbineers, and is operated today Lieutenant Colonel Sprott of the SCOTS